Good evening, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine.
It's Monday, February 9th, 2026. It's Spathania, and it's time for The Swamp. A federal judge has blocked Governor Gavin Newsom's new law requiring ICE agents to unmask, citing the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution. And the debate on voter ID and the SAVE Act continues, with data from Pew Research showing that 71% of Democrats favor voter ID. And Vice President JD Vance visits Armenia for a state visit, meeting with the Prime Minister and discussing relations between our two countries. And President Trump drops a long-winded Truth Social post today talking about Canada and how unfairly they've been treating our country. And he made a surprising announcement. Lately, Democrats have been strongly demanding that ICE and Border Patrol carry body cameras at all times, and now they're suddenly backpedaling, saying that body cameras can be an invasion of privacy. And the mainstream news is reporting that less than 14% of illegal immigrants apprehended by federal agents have U.S. criminal records, and both ICE and Homeland Security corrects that record. And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth visits the General Dynamics factory in Bath, Maine, where he gives a speech on the future of naval ship manufacturing. And there's a lot more that happened today, so we're going to dive straight in. And if you enjoy the video, please give the video a quick like if you get a second, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the daily updates. And if you leave a comment below, I might just read it on tomorrow's episode. And every article you'll see in this video will be linked below in the description. Starting off with Attorney General Pamela Bondi from just 2 hours ago as of this recording. Another key court victory thanks to our outstanding Justice Department attorneys. Following our arguments, a district court in California blocked the enforcement of a law that would have banned federal agents from wearing masks to protect their identities. These federal agents are harassed, doxxed, obstructed, and attacked on a regular basis just for doing their jobs. We have no tolerance for it. We will continue fighting and winning in court for President Trump's law and order agenda, and we will always have the backs of our great federal law enforcement officers. And did she link anything else? No, just some comments here and there, but there's a lot to get through, so I'm just going to jump straight to the next one. Breaking 911, same time frame. Breaking, federal judge blocks California law requiring ICE agents to unmask. District Judge Christina Snyder argues that the law discriminated against the federal government and violated the Constitution's Supremacy Clause. And I do have this article. I mean, they put Fox at the end, but they didn't link any articles. I mean, certainly not from Fox, but I do have this from Politico. I figured this might be a little fitting since Politico leans just a hair to the left, don't they? Maybe just a little more than just a hair. A judge on Monday blocked California from enforcing a new law sharply limiting when federal agents can wear masks while engaged in deportation operations. U.S. District Court Christina Snyder rejected the Trump administration's claim that ICE agents need to wear masks to prevent doxing. And by the way, actually, no, I don't think it was Christina Snyder. The judge that put a stop to this new law is a Clinton-era judge. Anyway, however, in a 30-page decision, the judge said California's No Secret Police Act, hilarious, appears to violate the Constitution's Supremacy Clause by discriminating against the federal government because the law's provisions do not apply to state or local law enforcement officers. Quite interesting. The act treats federal law enforcement officers differently than similarly situated state law enforcement officers, Snyder concluded. So that seems to tell me that what they're just going to simply do is just pass a law, or they're just going to rewrite this No Secret Police Act to include local and state law enforcement. And I assume that if that were to come before this judge, they would just simply say, yeah, sure, you can do that. Anyway, but the judge also turned down the federal government's request to block another California law aimed at abuses in immigration enforcement, the, quote, No Vigilantes Act, end quote. It requires most local, state, and federal law enforcement personnel to display their name or badge number while on duty. Snyder, a Clinton appointee based in Los Angeles, said that the law is likely to pass constitutional muster because it applies more broadly, and including to California officials. She also suggested the anti-masking law would be constitutional if it were broadened to cover state and local law enforcement. Like I said, I already know. I can't see the future, but it's not too difficult to assume what California is going to do next with this one. The court finds that these acts serve the public interest by promoting transparency, which is essential for accountability and public trust. Moreover, the court finds no cognizable justification for law enforcement officers to conceal their identities during their performance of routine, non-exempted law enforcement functions and interactions with the general public, Snyder wrote. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess you can make an argument for that. However, a lot of people that they interact with, they're cartel members, organized crime. They want their identities to be protected, at least from those individuals. Although I don't really have a massive problem with them not wearing masks when they're dealing with everyday criminals and everyday deportations of just simply illegal immigrants. I don't really have a problem with that. If they're going after a targeted operation from some high-level drug dealer or cartel member, as I said, then sure, go masked up, because it's a high-risk sort of situation where they could just use their identities to, I don't know, put a hit out on them, send a hit squad to their home or whatever. So anyway, all right, so I'll leave that link below in the description. A lot to get through tonight, so just going to move straight on to the next topic. Well, same topic, different post. Bill Milligan breaking Los Angeles-based federal judge Christina Snyder, who is a Clinton employee, has blocked California from enforcing its law that requires ICE agents to unmask, arguing the law discriminates against the federal government by singling it out and it violates the Supremacy Clause. So I guess we'll just wait and see, not if, but probably when, California rewrites that law to include local and state law enforcement. And then the judge will say, yep, you're good to go. Even though I think it's ridiculous. I'm sure the Supreme Court would probably rule that unconstitutional, because a state can't set law for federal officials. I mean, the best they can do is state level government. They can't set any laws that pertain to federal law enforcement, at least not to my knowledge. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Trump war room. 9 hours ago, 71% of Democrats support voter ID laws. Listen to the voters, Senator Schumer and Rep. Jeffries, Timu Obama, and Chucky Chuck. Long-standing support in both parties for paper ballot backups requiring photo ID. Let me see if I can make that bigger. Nah, of course not. Here, let me actually try this. Yeah, see, that's a little better. Requiring electronic voting machines to print a paper backup of the ballot. Looks like 82. Well, so they have the scale from 2018 going all the way up to now, 2026. And that's the case, I'm assuming, for all four of those graphics. So I'm just going to go with the latest one. 82% Democrat, 87% Republican with regard to the voting machines, requiring all voters to show government-issued photo ID to vote. 71% Democrat, 95% Republican. And removing people from registration lists if they have not recently voted or confirmed their registration. Only 24% Democrat, 63% Republican. And banning groups from collecting completed ballots from a large number of voters in order to return them to official voting centers. 37%, of course, and 55% Republicans. So there you have it. And from Mike Lee, to his great credit, Senator Fetterman is simply agreeing with a majority of Democrats, Republicans, and all Americans who support voter ID. I hope more of his colleagues follow his example.
And me, as a Democrat, I do not believe that it's unreasonable or to show ID just to vote. And I remind everybody that less than a year ago in Wisconsin, they added that to the Constitution by a 63%, passing, to put that in the Constitution that you have to show ID to vote. And they also elected a very, very liberal
it's also the case in Ohio,
justice into their Supreme
I think in my
Court.
State of Florida.
So it's not a radical idea for regular Americans to show your ID to vote. And it's absolutely, those things are not Jim Crow or anything. Of course, that's part of an awful, awful legacy of our nation for so long ago. But where we are now, trying to find a way forward, just trying to call balls and strikes, seeing what's unreasonable, hopefully we don't have to do, and pay the TSA people and everyone, secure our border, and focus on deporting all of those kinds of criminals, wherever they are. That's the guy that votes for that and supports that as a Democrat, and I don't ever want to vote to shut our government down again.
Right, and you are very much where the people are. Look, that's what most people would like to see. Prioritize the criminals. Take the criminals out of the country who are here illegally but are also committing crime. But, I mean, is there any other way to view the fact that Democrat leadership refused to have ID to vote? Is there any other way to read it other than they want illegals to vote? I mean, can you read it any other way?
Well, I mean, for me, the Save Act is not going to pass because of the filibuster, because they would need at least 7 or 8 Democratic votes to pass that. And now remember also, all the Democrats, all we wanted to eliminate the filibuster, except for it was Manchin and Sinema. They wanted to eliminate the filibuster, and now our party loves the filibuster. And then I do think think the filibuster is a good thing, and it does force us to work together overall.
Right. Sure, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I will say this as a Democrat: I do not believe it's radical or extreme to just produce ID to vote overall.
Ridiculous.
Exactly. All right, Senator.
I mean, come on, man. Give me a break. And you know what? Senator Fetterman, he never ceases to amaze me. When he first ran against Dr. Oz, he had his stroke, and I was convinced at that point that he was going to be Biden light and would vote with Democrats 100% of the time. A whole new addition to the squad, John Fetterman, like probably the leader of the squad, but no, how wrong I was. I mean, he's aligned with Republicans on a lot of things, but he's more aligned with that classical type of Democrat, classical liberal, where he still maintains a pretty decent level of common sense, actually, compared to all the rest of the Democrats who have lost their effing minds. All right, Rep. Tony Weed, 7 hours ago, 83% of Americans, including 71% of Democrats, support common sense voter ID. House Democrats are once again choosing to ignore the will of the American people, but Republicans will stand with them and pass the Save America Act.
Now, I understand you don't support things like a passport, for example, but requiring basic ID in order to vote is really popular. A Pew poll from a few months ago showed 83% of Americans, including 71% of your fellow Democrats, support requiring an ID to vote. Why are they wrong? Now, I understand you don't support things like a passport, for example.
Wait, did they cut something out?
But requiring basic ID in order to vote?
What the hell? We didn't even get his answer to it. Well, that's bullshit. Okay. Rep. Tony Weed, what the hell, dude? All right. Anyway, whatever. Moving on. I mean, look, I would watch all of these before I did the show, but I just simply don't have time, man. I work all day, so it's grueling enough to try to put together everything before I start a show. I wish I had the time. Maybe someday I will. Anyway, I thought we were going to get at least like a 5-second response. All right, whatever. I mean, not that he was going to say anything intelligent to begin with. All right, Speaker Mike Johnson, even CNN must admit the working families' tax cuts are putting more money in the pockets of the American people. And I believe I've got this article because he didn't share it. You forgot the link, Mr. Speaker, which he did. There's no link here to CNN, so I decided to pull it myself. And why federal tax refunds may be bigger than usual. Tax filing season has officially begun and will run through April 15th. Hassle, though it might be to file your federal income tax return, if you are like a majority of U.S. filers, you will get a refund soon after you do. But this year, that refund may be noticeably larger, assuming nothing significant has changed about your financial or family life since 2024. The average refund paid out last year was $3,167 through December 26 per IRS filing statistics, and the Treasury is now projecting tax refunds will increase by an average of $1,000 this year per household. Why is that? 2 main reasons. Congress made a number of new and expanded tax breaks effective for tax year 2025, and 2, most people did not adjust the tax withholding on their paychecks last year to account for the changes in their tax breaks. They just couldn't give the credit to the Republicans, could they? It wasn't really Congress. I mean, technically, of course, yeah, it was Congress, but it was a very one-sided side of Congress. Of course, the Republicans, with very, very few Democrats, if any, that agreed to pass those tax breaks. And people who didn't adjust the tax withholding, look, plain and simple, it was because Republicans passed bills and Trump signed them into law that allowed us to get massive tax breaks thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. All right, so anyway, for clients whose income filing status and dependents haven't changed much since 2024, the combination of expanded tax benefits for 2025 and unchanged withholding is clearly pushing refunds higher, said Tom O'Sabin, Director of Tax Content for National Association of Tax Professionals. Let's first take that point on withholding. Your tax liability for 25 went down because of the changes to the tax law, but your tax payments didn't, he explained. As a result, the extra tax benefit shows up as a refund rather than increased take-home pay. Or for those who don't usually get a refund, it may simply result in a lower tax or overall tax bill. Well, plus there's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, all of those Trump's slogan, Trump's idea that was put into law. While Congress made a bevy of tax changes for 2025, offering a new tax break on car loan interest, also Trump's idea, tips and overtime pay, and the child tax credit, the expansion of 2 common tax breaks, and the introduction of a new one for seniors may account for the biggest increases in the average refund this year. A larger standard deduction is taken by the vast majority of filers. Congress boosted it by $750 to $15,750 for single filers and by $1,500 to $31,500 for married couples filing jointly. Quote, this is the most broadly impactful change because it affects millions of filers across income levels and filing statuses. Even modest increases in the standard deduction translate directly into lower taxable income, O'Sabin said. Thank Trump. Thank you, President Trump. An expanded SALT deduction. If you live in a high tax state, i.e. any blue state, you will be allowed to deduct up to $40,000 in state and local taxes, either your income or sales tax plus property taxes. That is up from just $10,000 last year. Thank you, Republicans. You can only claim your deduction if you itemize rather than take the standard deduction, but the jump in how much you may deduct means it may make sense for more filers to itemize. This change may be significant and often produces a noticeable refund increase, especially when withholding was not adjusted. A new senior deduction, it's income restricted and limited to those filers who are 65 and older, but eligible senior citizens will be allowed to take a special $6,000 deduction and $12,000 for joint filers on top of either their standard deduction or their itemized deductions. Thank you, Republicans. It can materially reduce tax liability. The AARP estimates more than 30 million seniors will benefit. And then it goes into checking your withholding and gets into some details with regard to that. That'll be linked below if you want to have a look at that. And rolling on to Leader John Thune, a government shutdown, even one that affects just one agency, is not in anybody's interest, especially the hardworking Americans who staff these agencies and the American people who depend on their important work. So the main reason that I wanted to show this, not necessarily for the video, which I'll play it, I did notice, of course, this got ratioed. I'm assuming the vast majority of comments are people demanding that A, he nukes the filibuster, and B, passes the SAVE Act. So I jumped into his profile earlier, and I had a look and noticed that everything, let's see, where's his first one? Okay, so that's the one that we're about to look at. It seems like every one of his posts he's getting ratioed. 874 likes, 1,300 comments. Is that John Thune? Yeah, so 1,000 likes, 1,200 comments. That's a ratio. And that's Ted Budd, Senator Brasso. He's reposting these, by the way. Leader John Thune reposted. And Leader John Thune, this one, 3,000 likes, 5,000 comments. And the next one, 2,600 likes, 5,000 comments, 166 likes, 2,500 comments. That's a brutal ratio. And we got another one, 165 to 378 comments. And I'm pointing this out because anytime that there's a post that is quote unquote ratioed on the X platform, meaning that it gets a lot more comments than likes, that generally means that whatever it is that he is saying, those who are viewing this post, they are so disgruntled that they're going to take extra time to leave a comment as opposed to just simply either ignoring it or those who sometimes like a post, they may drop a comment. But generally speaking, 95% of the time, if something is quote unquote ratioed, at least on the X platform, that means that it is a post that is highly unfavorable with regard to the people looking at them. So another one, 2,400, 6,500, 717, 6,600. I mean, it goes on and on. I don't think there's a single one that's not ratioed. That one's ratioed. That one's ratioed. That one is. And I'm telling you, it's going to be comment after comment talking about the filibuster and the SAVE Act. Like the American people, they want the SAVE Act passed. And even going by what Senator Fetterman's, what he said, that they could put it to the floor, but it's not going to pass. I don't know, with this whole standing filibuster, maybe that might pose some sort of a way to ultimately get it passed. I don't know. That seems to be something that the Republicans have in their toolbox that could get the SAVE Act passed. But it seems like John Thune just doesn't want to put it to the floor. So, and as a result, he's just been getting brutally ratioed day after day after day. It's quite crazy. All right, so we'll give this a watch, at least some of it. Mr. President,
funding for the Department of Homeland Security runs out on Friday. Over the weekend, the Trump administration and congressional Democrats engaged in meaningful talks on a path forward. And Democrats have made their demands known in detail. Some of them are positive starting points for further discussion. Others are non-starters and unnecessarily tie the hands of law enforcement. In the coming days, the administration and Democrats will need to work out their differences.
Well, you know those non-starters, they're
I
going to use
expect that the
to
Trump
shut down the
administration, with the
government.
full backing of congressional Republicans, will continue to resist any effort to make it harder for law enforcement to detain and deport dangerous illegal aliens, which is what many
of course,
the Democrats' demands
They've got the 2030 census to think about.
And I expect that the administration, again, with the backing of Republicans here in Congress,
especially
will
with blue
insist on
states, man, they're
reforms
losing population
of its own.
Especially California.
I expect that those will include changes
lose
aimed
like
at
300,000
protecting federal law
residents last
enforcement
year, I think?
officers who are increasingly under threat from an organized and well-funded campaign to undermine immigration enforcement efforts. Equally important is addressing cooperation, or the lack thereof, between local and federal law enforcement. Too many jurisdictions prohibit local police from cooperating with immigration enforcement, a policy that not only defies common sense, but makes things more dangerous for everyone. And so I hope that my Democrat colleagues are prepared to talk about these and other issues. Mr. President, as in any good faith negotiation, there will be some back and forth. We've already seen the Trump administration act in good faith.
I think Democrats long forgot about
announced an
what back and
agreement to
forth
draw
means.
down 700 federal agents in Minnesota, something made possible thanks to increased cooperation from local law enforcement.
Okay, well, if you've been following my show lately, he's just basically repeating everything that we've heard over the last couple of weeks. But regardless, I'll give this a repost if you want to watch the rest of that. There's a direct link to my profile in the description below, or you can go to @LeaderJohnThune. Even if you don't have an X account, you can just go to x.com. You don't have to be signed in. You can click on this little search thing, Explore. And you type in his name right there, John Thune. Let me just... There you go, Leader John Thune. Takes you right there. And let me just take a quick look and see when that was posted. Come on, go back. All right. It was at 4:04 p.m., February 9th. And moving on to USDA OIG from earlier today, a woman who raised, trained, and traded roosters for illegal cockfighting was sentenced after federal conviction. And so I've got a different stance when it comes to cockfighting. The whole gambling thing, I'm not into gambling, don't like gambling. So, to each his own as far as that goes. However, I was looking this up earlier. There's an estimated 300 million male chickens that are killed every year in the United States because they're just simply rendered useless because their meat isn't used, and they can't lay eggs, obviously. So as soon as they hatch, they destroy the male chickens, and of course they keep the female chickens. So, I mean, look, like rather than just simply killing them immediately when they're born, why not give them an opportunity to live at least somewhat of a decent life, at least up to adulthood? Let it fight. And I know roosters, they love fighting. Roosters, they'll fight their asses off. And plus, these cockfighting roosters are pampered beyond belief. They have their own pad. They get to live separately from other roosters, of course, because obviously they're going to fight each other. They're fed really well. They're treated really well. And I don't know, I'm not like a big advocate for cockfighting. I'm just saying that, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, especially somebody who's because these roosters that this woman was raising, she wasn't, highly doubt she was being abusive toward them. Although I know that with regard to their training, some of the training can be a bit brutal from what I understand. I've seen some YouTube documentaries on cockfighting. That's why I kind of changed my stance a little bit toward it. Still a very imperfect system, especially when it comes to the whole gambling thing. But all right, but anyway, we'll get into this and we'll see how long she got in terms of prison time. So this is out of Concord. A Chester woman was sentenced today in federal court for her involvement in the illegal cockfighting activities in New Hampshire and North Carolina. From U.S. Attorney Aaron Cregan, Jennifer Scott, 42, was sentenced to a year of probation in order to pay a fine of $2,500 by the U.S. Magistrate Judge Andrea K. Johnstone. So that's not bad. That's really not that bad at all. She didn't get any prison time. As a term of her probation, the defendant is prohibited from owning or raising roosters or chickens. In October 2025, Scott pleaded guilty to one count of attending an animal fighting venture. And I'll have that linked, I guess. If you really want to look at that, it'll be down there. And from Taylor Van Kirk in Yerevan, Vice President JD Vance shakes hands with the Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Pashinyan? And the cameras be flicking. So he heads on in, and he gives a speech. Watch VP highlights the details of some of the recent agreements and partnerships established between the U.S. and Armenia.
I want to announce a few things, and the Prime Minister announced a few of them, but I want to reiterate what we've done here and what we're going to continue to work on together. So first of all, he mentioned this incredible tech deal. The United States was proud to issue a number of export licenses for the sale of high-powered NVIDIA chips. Now, what does that mean? That means new markets for American workers and for American businesses, but it also means greater prosperity for the people of Armenia. These are chips that simply do not exist in most countries in the world. They are now going to be developed, and the data centers using those chips are going to be built, and in fact are already being built because of the Prime Minister's leadership, and we're very happy to partner on that. It will mean great things for American workers, and I think great things for the people of Armenia as well. We're also very proud to announce that our nations have completed negotiations on a 1-2-3 civil nuclear cooperation agreement. Now, once that is completely stood up, it'll pave the way for American and Armenian companies to strike deals on civil nuclear projects. That means up to $5 billion in initial U.S. exports, plus an additional $4 billion in long-term support through fuel and maintenance contracts. This is the classic win-win for both Armenia and the United States of America. It means stronger energy security for my own country, and it also, I think, means stronger energy security for Armenia, and it's also going to create a lot of new jobs back home in the United States. It means small modular reactors. American technology is going to be coming to this country.
I can't wait for those to roll out.
It's one of the few
That's exciting as hell.
Small modular nuclear reactors. Enough to invest at this level, to send this kind of technology, and it's happening because of the Prime Minister's leadership. I'm also very proud to talk about the TRIP Enterprise Fund. I think most of you here are familiar with TRIP, with the historic transformation that it's going to bring to the region, but let me say a couple of additional things. It is going to open up a whole new world of trade, transit, and energy flows in this region of the world, and it will create unprecedented connections between Armenia and its neighbors. Now, that is great for the prosperity of the people of Armenia, but it is also great for the enduring project of peace, because when you create these interconnected economies, energy sectors, and so forth, it means that this region can have an enduring peace. We don't just want to make peace with the Prime Minister and the President's leadership. We also want to make sure that that peace endures, and that is something that we are accomplishing here today. A couple of other things that I want to announce. There's a lot. This is a busy agenda here, and we're very proud of it. The TRIP Fund, what it will do is means that a lot of private capital is going to flow into building railroads, into building pipelines, and again, to building the interconnectedness that will create real prosperity for the region, but also allow the peace agreement to stick. I also was very happy with the Prime Minister just a couple of minutes ago to see some of the new drone technology that we will be selling to Armenia. As President Trump knows very well, the very best way to ensure that you have peace is to establish real deterrence. And the best way to establish real deterrence is with the best military technology in the world, and the United States has that. And for the first time, we are announcing a major sale of military technology, $11 million in surveillance drone technology to the Armenians and to our good friend, the Prime Minister. He's going to use that to secure his country and to make sure that the peace that we're creating sticks. That means for the United States, more jobs and more investment in our own defense technology sector.
I mean, regardless, 11 million is 11 million. I mean, if they're going to buy it from us, that's just more job security for us. And for all I know, Armenia, they've already got nukes. I'm not sure. I'm assuming they're a NATO member. And we've got this from also Vice President Vance. I'll just play it out.
This is a beautiful country.
Whatever it says, we're just going to hear it anyway.
A country that the President of the United States is very proud to partner with, that the President of the United States is very proud to have a great relationship with. And I know that President Trump sends his best regards both to you personally, but also to the people of Armenia. And what President Trump and the Prime Minister have accomplished together is really visionary. Peace is not made by cautious people. Peace is not made by people who are too focused on the past. Peace is made by people who are focused on the future. And because the Prime Minister made such great progress and has had such a great relationship with both me and the President of the United States, we're not just making peace for Armenia, we're also creating real prosperity for Armenia and the United States together. So much of the great economic cooperation that we want to announce today would not have been possible without your leadership, without the peace that you committed your country to, and without, of course, the President of the United States' leadership. And so I'm grateful for all of those things, because I really do believe that tonight marks a new beginning for Armenia and the United States and the partnership that our country can have together.
All right, well, sounds good to me. And Vice President Vance, he's over in Europe. He attended the opening ceremony at the Olympics, as you might know, especially if you're following the Olympics, of course. But there's other videos of him like getting off the plane this morning in Armenia, meeting with the Prime Minister. They had a sit down together, and you could probably find a lot of that right here on Rapid Response. It's a great account where you can get a lot of the latest updates, a lot of real-time updates that are happening in the Trump administration. And they post a lot of stuff with JD Vance. Of course, he's got his own profile at VP, and he posts a lot of his stuff on there as well. All right, and this is going to be the entire speech that he delivered. And of course, I'm not going to play it, but I'm just going to show that it's here. And I'm going to repost that. Again, direct link to my profile in the description, or you can go to @VP. And he posted this at 10:16 a.m. So you could scroll down to the point where he posted at 10 o'clock this morning, and you could watch it in its entirety right there. Which, of course, it's probably over here on YouTube also. I mean, most of these speeches, I imagine, are on some YouTube channel out there somewhere. Probably not that hard to find if you're interested in looking at that. And we also got this, also for Rapid Response, from about 2 hours ago as of this recording. And it is, here, let me see if I can read it a little better here. Yeah, this looks a little bit better to read from this angle, or from this view. So it's from President Trump, his True Social account, talking about Canada. As everyone knows, the country of Canada has treated the United States very unfairly for decades. Now things are turning around for the USA, and fast. But imagine Canada is building a massive bridge between Ontario and Michigan. They own both the Canada and the United States side, and of course, built it with virtually no U.S. content. President Barack Hussein Obama stupidly gave them a waiver so they could get around the Buy American Act and not use any American products, including our steel. Now the Canadian government expects me as President of the United States to permit them to just take advantage of America. What does the United States of America get? Absolutely nothing. Ontario won't even put U.S. spirits, beverages, and other alcoholic products on their shelves. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And they are absolutely prohibited from doing so. And now, on top of everything else, Prime Minister Carney wants to make a deal with China, which will eat Canada alive. We'll just get the leftovers. I don't think so. The first thing China will do is terminate all ice hockey being played in Canada. Is he serious about that? And permanently eliminate the Stanley Cup. I mean, I don't know, man. Sometimes Trump be playing that 4D chess. The tariffs Canada charges us for our dairy products have for many years been unacceptable, putting our farmers at great financial risk. I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them. And also, importantly, Canada treats the United States with fairness and respect that we deserve. We will start negotiations immediately. With all that we have given them, we should own perhaps at least 1/2 of this asset. The revenues generated because of the U.S. market will be astronomical. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Well, look, there's a very good reason why they're constructing this bridge into the United States, and that's exactly the reason, because it's going to help the Canadian economy in a huge way. And I can't believe that Obama just allowed them to build that with like 100% non-American materials, like there no deals or anything, like nothing at all that's going to be beneficial on the United States side with regard to the construction of this bridge. Absolutely ridiculous. And from Secretary Kristi Noem 3 hours ago, a win for the rule of law and vindication for the U.S. Constitution. Under the previous administration, temporary protected status was abused to allow violent terrorists, criminals, and national security threats into our nation. TPS, which is temporary protected status, as it said, was never designed to be permanent, yet previous administrations have used it as a de facto amnesty program for decades. Given the improved situation in each of these countries, we are wisely concluding what was intended to be a temporary designation. So this is from the United States Court of Appeals, filed today, February the 9th, in the 9th Circuit, which, from my understanding, the 9th Circuit can be quite left-leaning at times because it's based in San Francisco. And it says, before Hawkins, Callahan, and Miller circuit judges On December 31st, the district court entered partial final judgment under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 54B, vacating the Secretary of Homeland Security's termination of temporary protected status designations for Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua. So Haiti's not mentioned in this one because they're working on getting the temporary protected status removed for the Haitians who have been here since the earthquake 15 years ago. Anyway, National TPS, All versus Noam, number 25-CV-05687, and then it goes on with a bunch of other numbers and whatnot. And it continues, the government has appealed and moved for a stay pending appeal. We grant the requested stay of the district court's vacatur order. The TPS statute, 8 U.S.C. section 1254A, permits the Secretary of Homeland Security to designate a foreign state for TPS when nationals of that state cannot return there safely due to armed conflict or natural disaster or other extraordinary and temporary conditions. National TPS, okay, it goes through all the numbers again. TPS holders are eligible for work authorization and protection from removal while their home country remains designated 8 U.S.C. section 1254A, A1. Periodically, the Secretary shall review the conditions in the foreign state for which a designation is in effect and shall determine whether the conditions for such designation continue to be met. If the Secretary finds that the conditions are no longer met, she shall terminate the designation by publishing notice in the Federal Register of the determination. This case involves TPS designations for Nepal, initially designated in 2015 because of the earthquake, and also Honduras and Nicaragua, get this, initially designated in 1999 because of Hurricane Mitch. Now, I distinctly remember in 2020, there was a Cat 4 or a Cat 5 hurricane that hit Nicaragua head on. And then just 2 weeks later, I don't even think it was 2 weeks later, it was like 12 days later, a second Category 4 hurricane hit only 10 miles from where the first one made landfall. The eye of both storms are only about 10, 15 miles apart when they made landfall in Nicaragua. I just find that interesting that they're still citing 1999 when they had two brutal back-to-back hurricanes that happened just about 5 years ago. All right, so anyway, where was I? Let's see. Okay, in 2025, the Secretary terminated the TPS designations for all three countries. See Federal Register 24151. Anyway, numbers. In this class action, plaintiffs asserted statutory and constitutional challenges to those termination decisions. The district court determined that the decisions violated the Administrative Procedure Act, and it entered a final judgment vacating the terminations. The government has appealed and now seeks a stay pending appeal. So that is the very latest on their push to get these three countries' temporary protected status finally removed because it's only temporary. And these instances happened many years ago, and it's still moving its way through the courts. I don't know if it's going to find its way up to the Supreme Court. Probably. It wouldn't surprise me. Okay, House Foreign Affairs Committee Majority, 78-year-old Jimmy Lai was unjustly sentenced to 20 years in prison for advocating democracy in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's governing documents mean nothing. Freedom of speech and the press are dead under CCP rule. Beijing is in no position to lecture the world. #free Jimmy Lai. And there you have it. I don't know if they actually linked an article or not to this. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Yeah, it looks like they have one here from Variety.news. And I guess I'll open this up. We'll look at the first part of it. And of course, I'll have this linked. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai sentenced to 20 years. 78 years old, pro-democracy media tycoon and founder of the now defunct Apple Daily newspaper was sentenced to 20 years in prison by a Hong Kong court on Monday. Convicted in December on 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 count to conspiracy to publish seditious materials under Beijing's national security law. The sentence was handed down by 3 judges appointed under the national security law, with 18 years to be served consecutively to a previous 5-year, 9-month fraud sentence. Given Lai's age, the prison term could keep him behind bars for the rest of his life, with his earliest possible release date in 2044, when he would be 96. 6 former Apple Daily executives and 2 activists were also sentenced on the same day, receiving jail terms ranging from 6 years to 3 months to 10 years. The convicted journalists included publisher Cheng Kum Hung, associate publisher Chan Poiman, editor-in-chief Ryan Law, executive editor-in-chief Lam Man Chung, and editorial writer Young Ching Ki. Wow, man. You know, I thought that they had an agreement with Great Britain until, what was that, like the mid-2030s or something like that? Or maybe it was the mid-2020s when the whole leave Hong Kong alone, let them be independent until such a time expires when China can essentially take them back over again. I guess that's come to pass. Okay, Rep. Riley M. Moore, please join me in praying for the safe return of Friar Nathaniel Asuwai of Holy Trinity Parish in Kaduna, who was kidnapped alongside 10 others. 3 of his parishioners were brutally murdered by radical Islamic jihadists during the attack. The last week has been some of the most horrifically bloody days in recent history for Christians across Nigeria. The genocide of Christians must end, and it falls squarely on the Nigerian government's shoulders to defend its citizens, all of its citizens, and end this violent persecution. Please keep praying for our brothers and sisters in Christ. I don't know if Trump is keeping a close eye on this, because he's mentioned, and look, we already conducted airstrikes in Nigeria with regard to this exact situation. And President Trump said that, I mean, he was quite brazen when he said that if this continues, we're going to be, coming after him with an iron fist. So I don't know if we're going to start seeing more airstrikes against certain targets in Nigeria, the radical Islamists in there or in that country. Guess we'll have to see. Catholic Arena, Nigeria, Friar Nathaniel Asuwai has been kidnapped from Holy Trinity Parish in Kafanchan Catholic Diocese. 3 of his parishioners were murdered by the terrorists. Nigeria Catholic priests kidnapped, and 3 Catholics have been slaughtered. So, I mean, hopefully he's alive, and hopefully they'll have a happy ending with his situation. Hopefully he'll be released. Yeah, it's pretty horrible what's happening there. Definitely shouldn't just fade into just the ether of just everyday mainstream news. It's definitely something that should be kept a close eye on. Senator Dick Durbin, I am on the Senate floor calling on Republicans to work with Democrats on common sense reforms to ICE and Border Patrol that would rein in their terror campaign. So he is literally calling ICE and Border Patrol terrorists. I mean, that's how I'm reading it. Reining in their terror campaign. So if they're engaging in a campaign of terror, would that not make them terrorists? So that's pretty much, that's where Democrats, that's where they've devolved to at this point. They're now referring to our federal law enforcement as terrorists.
Minneapolis and across
the
country.
So we'll just give this a minute or so.
I'm sorry to say we've made little progress in reaching an agreement. The administration's campaign of terror has led to the detention of innocent people, serious injuries, and deaths, including those of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, of course, what he's failing to mention to anybody who might be listening to this, the very few people who's listening to this thing only got 89 comments, so it's not like anybody really watched his speech on the Senate floor. But what he's failing to mention was that Alex Preddy was caught on camera a week before the shooting happened, still armed because he carries his firearm everywhere, or he did, and he spat on law enforcement, and he kicked out the taillight of one of their vehicles, and then he started fighting back with them. And that was a week before that situation happened. So he had already been violent toward federal agents before that incident, so they must have already been aware of who he was when the situation unfolded, where he ended up getting shot by federal agents. And then, of course, Renee Good was trying to strike. No, not trying to. She literally struck a federal agent with her vehicle, causing internal bleeding in his abdomen. He had to go to the hospital, and that was confirmed by the Department of Homeland Security. So, of course, he's not going to mention any of that now, is he?
Both American citizens who were exercising their constitutional rights to observe and protest ICE enforcement.
They were obstructing, dude.
Americans are seeing this chaos play out in countless videos.
8-year prison sentence.
And they're demanding change. President Trump has justified these militarized immigration enforcement operations as targeting the worst of the worst and, quote, murderers, rapists, terrorists, the criminally insane.
Duh.
But the statistics of the Department of Homeland Security tell a much different story.
Yeah, it's like
the
71%.
Real story.
You want to hear the fake number? Here
New reporting from CBS News shows that less than 14% of the nearly 400,000 immigrants arrested by ICE in 2025 had charges or convictions for violent criminal offenses.
Now, see, that's also another key word. convictions. So a lot of these people have been arrested and they've been charged, and a lot of them haven't been convicted. Now, this is just my own personal opinion as it stands, that a lot of these immigrants that they have that they've marked for deportation and they've put them through deportation and they're out of the country, that the 70%, I believe, includes those who have been charged with crimes and may not have been convicted. I think that's kind of the key takeaway, or at least the key word with all this, that that's what the Democrats are alluding to, that 14% are those who have been fully convicted of crimes, whereas the vast majority, because a lot of them, they entered the country just in the last few years, and they've been recently charged with crimes, and they haven't been fully put through the court system and convicted of said crimes.
The president was railing at his rallies. We're going after the murderers, the terrorists, the rapists, the child abusers.
Oh, good grief, dude. All right, whatever. I'm just going to repost it. Now, look, I might be wrong on my stance, or at least on how I'm reading that, but we're going to get to that here in just a minute. I've got actually a few posts with regard to that 14% number with CBS News, and I do have the link to CBS as well. Senate Republicans want to fund the government and keep Americans safe. Democrats are threatening a partial shutdown to protest law enforcement officers and the deportation of criminals.
This is about the safety and security of the American people. We have been left a mess because of Joe Biden's open border policies.
And this moral inversion that the Democrats want to put place, that somehow the lawbreakers deserve sympathy, but not the people enforcing our laws, are, those are the villains, is totally wrong.
Democrats are focusing so hard on what ICE is doing because they're trying to distract the American people on all the good that President Trump and the Republicans are doing.
Democrats want to abolish ICE. You've seen them the signs being carried in the streets. They want to abolish borders. They want to turn America into a sanctuary country.
One of the TSA agents caught me and said, I feel like my paycheck is bipolar. I just never know if it's going to show up. They're now being held hostage by Democrats who are mad at something in Minnesota.
Some of the other stuff they're asking is just clearly unmoored.
They're going to shut down the government to generate a narrative to think that helps them win elections.
They negotiated a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security and then subsequently walked away from it. And if they want to try and shut down the government over that, I think that's going to be a very hard position for them.
Okay, well, the fight continues. Republicans versus Democrats. The crazy, hair on fire, insane, lost their ever-loving minds. Democrats. All right, White House, an American mother and daughter lost their lives when an illegal alien with multiple prior charges was released back onto our streets because of sanctuary city policies. This was entirely preventable. This is our why.
So a horrible story here. An illegal alien is now facing deportation after he was allegedly driving drunk when he killed a mother and daughter in a horrific wrong-way crash. The Mexican national has a lengthy rap sheet, including 2 DUI arrests this year alone. Joining me now to talk about this is U.S. Customs and Border Protection Senior Advisor Ron Vitello. Ron, great to see you.
Thanks for inviting me.
So shockingly, this happened in yet another sanctuary state of New Jersey.
Of course.
How many times are we going to see this, Ron? I mean, it feels like we're banging our head against the wall. Just take a look at this guy's rap sheet. Should have never been on the streets in the first place. Before he allegedly killed
Yeah, and where's the Democrats' bleeding hearts for these victims? And there's a lot more than just 2 people who were killed by illegal aliens in recent history. And the only 2 names that the Democrats keep screaming about and putting to the front is Renee Good and Alex Preddy, the 2 who were obstructing ICE agents, fighting with law enforcement and law enforcement agents, Department of Homeland Security, CBP, and so on and so forth, Border Patrol. And you don't hear the Democrats, talking about all of these victims who were killed by illegal immigrants, and not just the violent criminals, but also those who have their CDLs that are causing fatalities on the highways. There was one that just happened about a week ago. Maybe it's almost 2 weeks ago at this point in Indiana, where an illegal immigrant from, I'm trying to remember where he was from, Kyrgyzstan, I think. He ended up killing 4 people in Indiana, operating a large 18-wheeler driving in the wrong direction, ended up hitting a vehicle head on, killing 4 people.
This mom and daughter, this year alone, April, DUI arrest released. March, DUI arrest released. June of 2023, domestic violence arrest released. This guy was in local custody multiple times. ICE was never notified.
Nope,
they don't cooperate with ICE. This guy was released every single time. Now a mom and her little girl are dead. Your thoughts?
It's very unfortunate. Our hearts go out to this family. There are too many angel families in the United States. This is a typically preventable crime. It's the most preventable crime that we have in the United States. This risk is all over the place. New Jersey, as an example, this individual, it is a very simple process for the local jurisdiction, the sheriff's office, the city jail, to pick up the phone and call ICE enforcement removal operations and say, this person was born outside of the United States. They've committed a crime in our community against our citizens in New Jersey. Please come pick them up. ICE would come very carefully, take them from the jail setting, and put them on a path for removal.
Yeah, he's
this is
not
a very
armed.
simple
He's in
thing
jail.
to do. Having sanctuary jurisdictions is a destructive policy for the people who live in those jurisdictions. It needs to end. Federal law should trump this scenario in which they should turn these people over to immigration enforcement, and so they can be put on a path that would make less risk for all of us in these communities.
Yeah, and it's absolutely ridiculous. They're already behind bars, and all they would simply have to do, like he said, just have ICE come and pick them up. Instead, they're just letting them out of jail, and now immigration, customs enforcement, they have to go out into the public and try to hunt and try to find them and take care of business that way. And it requires a lot more than 2 officers, generally speaking, in order to carry that out. Instead, they could just peacefully pick them up at jail. That would be the easy way to go about it. But Democrats don't want that. They want the chaos. They want the bloodshed. They want the nightmare scenarios. That's what they want. They want the unrest. They want everything to just simply burn to the ground. And from Homeland Security from earlier, this is what success looks like. Unbreakable border security, fast and effective. Oh, shit. Didn't mean to do that. Uh-oh. All right, anyway, fast and effective disaster support, swift removal of violent criminals, safety being returned to the America we love. We've got a video from
This is Micah Baugh,
Security.
Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. Under the historic leadership of President Trump and Secretary Nome, DHS is surging forward with renewed purpose. This week, Secretary Nome hit the road to deliver results and show Americans the progress we're making under President Trump's leadership. On February 2nd, she traveled to Tupelo, Mississippi, joining Governor Tate Reeves to thank first responders for their outstanding work during Winter Storm Fern. DHS coordinated early, deployed teams to state emergency operations centers, and delivered 90 generators, plus 49 trailer loads of critical supplies, including meals, water, blankets, tarps, and oxygen to support state-led recovery and protect lives in extreme weather. Less than a day later, Secretary Nome was in Texas in the Del Rio sector with Texas National Guard and Border Patrol leaders. She toured the Rio Grande, highlighting Operation Riverwall and the $4.5 billion in smart wall contracts. Due to these efforts, the sector has seen an average 84% drop in encounters, gotaways, rescues, criminal arrests, and agent assaults compared to last year. This is proof that consequences work and that catch and release is over. Less than 24 hours later, the secretary was in Nogales, Arizona, to announce historic January numbers. This is the 9th month in a row of 0 illegal alien releases into the United States. Nationwide, encounters are at a record low for January, and massive drug seizures are occurring, including 816 pounds of fentanyl. That same day, Secretary Nome traveled to Grand Forks, North Dakota for a northern border roundtable with local leaders and officials. She is committing new resources, including updating the Border Patrol drone fleet to secure our 5,525-mile border with Canada. On the enforcement front, we are prioritizing public safety and showing the results. ICE arrested a Kyrgyzstan illegal alien truck driver who was linked to a devastating crash in Indiana that took 4 innocent lives. He entered through the failed CBP One app under the Biden administration and received a commercial driver's license in Pennsylvania. We are calling on all states to stop issuing CDLs to illegal aliens before more families pay the price. In Minnesota, Operation Metro Surge has now topped 4,000 arrests of criminal illegal aliens, including murderers, pedophiles, rapists, gang members, and terrorists. Recent operations removed individuals that have been convicted of sexual assault with minors, domestic assault, and other serious crimes.
You know, I would actually be curious to see what the crime numbers look like in Minnesota, especially this time next year. It'd be really interesting to take a look at the crime stats from 2026 and see how far that crime has actually dropped because they removed thousands of criminals out of Minneapolis.
Sanctuary policies that protect these threats will not slow us down. We are committed to getting dangerous people off of our streets. This is what success looks like.
Okay, all right, so we got it. You know, we got the gist of it. That would be an interesting statistic to be putting out into the public, especially in Minnesota, provided a Republican is running for office. As you know, Minnesota, it's a big state. There's Republicans that represent districts in Minnesota. With the midterms coming up, I think showing the crime statistics, the sharp drop in crime, because they've removed literally thousands of criminals, would certainly speak for itself. Okay, so we got this from Politico. Democrats fear body cameras could be ICE's new mass surveillance tool. So I showed this on yesterday's video. I did, it wasn't really a quick video, but I did a video last night where I covered this. And Democrats, all of a sudden, they're changing their stance. And of course, on Politico, they're not going to point out the fact that Democrats are suddenly backpedaling on their demand for ICE and CBP and just federal agents in general to carry around body cameras at all times. Now all of a sudden it's apparently a Fourth Amendment rights issue now. So anyway, a push to put body cameras on all ICE agents has Democrats running headlong into a new problem. Fear that the technology will provide another avenue for mass surveillance of protesters. Congressional Democratic leaders have made universal use of body cameras one of their prime demands for imposing accountability on Immigration and Customs Enforcement, especially after federal agents fatally shot 2 American citizens in Minneapolis. But after an outcry from privacy advocates that surveillance tools will allow ICE agents to identify and track protesters, Democrats are also calling for restrictions on how body cameras can be used. Well, last I checked, if they're out in public, they're out in public. If you're out in public, you have to assume that you're going to be on camera. Like, what is it? Like the average American, they're caught on camera like 30 times a day or something like that. If you commute for, to work, or if you're just out in public. I mean, we're on camera everywhere we go. I mean, that's just part of being out in public. You don't have any privacy when you're out in public. Democrats, okay, so, all right. So lawmakers and legal observers have accused ICE of leveraging a variety of cameras to surveil protesters, feeding pictures into license plate readers and facial recognition systems. Well, that's basically what happens all over the place anyway. License plate readers, that's pretty standard out in traffic. Democrats now worry that the body cameras they're demanding could be used for similar purposes. Democrats have proposed legislation to limit ICE's use of facial recognition, but the proposals are unlikely to advance without bipartisan support. Well, look, man, if the protesters aren't doing anything wrong, well, they got nothing to worry about. It's just Democrats understand that a lot of these protesters are breaking the law on a regular basis, and they just don't want them to be arrested or held account for the crimes that they're committing against law enforcement, because all of a sudden they're going to end up arresting lots and lots of these protesters, and the numbers aren't going to look as big as they look now whenever they're out there. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said they want to tack on restrictions on how ICE can use body camera footage, according to a letter sent to Republican leadership on Wednesday night. Prohibit tracking, creating or maintaining databases of individuals participating in First Amendment activities. Look, if they leave that embedded, then fine, whatever, because most of these protesters are not engaging in First Amendment activities. Instead, they're engaging in obstruction, because if they get a permit from the city and they're standing in the street and they're waving their signs, then yeah, they're exercising their First Amendment rights. However, when they're blocking streets, when ICE is trying to conduct a raid, or when they're trying to arrest somebody, that would be obstruction. So hardly a First Amendment activity. It's unclear how the request for new limits on surveillance will affect ongoing negotiations with Republicans to pass a funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security. Republicans already agreed to provide more funding for body cameras for ICE officers before Democrats began pushing for limits on how the images are used. A spokesperson for Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chair Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, told Politico that Democrats are lining up behind leadership to push for the restrictions. fueled by reports of ICE tracking protesters. DHS launched an internal investigation on ICE's use of surveillance after Warner sent a letter flagging privacy concerns or privacy worries. Yeah, but isn't there something called the Patriot Act? I'm sure that's still probably in effect. I'm sure there's probably tons of tools that ICE and really any agency in the government has at their disposal when it comes to surveillance. Wasn't that like the big problem that we had with the Patriot Act, was that it essentially turned our government into a massive surveillance state? And I'm sure Democrats, they were all gung-ho to pass that. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of Democrats voted for that to get passed. Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, who proposed a ban on ICE agents using facial recognition, also supported surveillance limits on body cameras. All right, well, we get the idea. The article continues quite away from there. But of course, as always, I'll keep that linked below. Senator Eric Schmidt, Democrats decided to pick a fight over immigration. Bring it on. 15 million people came here illegally under Joe Biden, and the American people are fed up. By the way, that's just 15 million that we know about. The real number is probably like 40. We're not going to do anything that'll kneecap our brave ICE agents from doing their jobs.
Let me just lay out the landscape for this week, because for the viewers, it may get confusing because there's so many, threatened shutdowns, it seems like every week. We passed 11 of the 12 appropriations bills a couple of weeks ago. There's a very temporary spending measure for DHS, which includes FEMA, ICE, TSA, a lot of things, actually. The Democrats thought that they were going to make this their issue or something. But this is a home game for us. The American people are tired of the 15 to 20 million people who came here illegally. They don't want to kneecap ICE's ability to do their jobs. So we need to say, we're not doing that. And I actually have a...
they can parade Alex Preddy and Renee Good all they want. They've got two people on their side. And look, I'm not justifying what happened to them. Look, I don't want anybody to get killed. That doesn't hold a candle to the number of angel moms and angel parents that are out there, the number of people who have been killed by illegal immigrants. Hundreds, if not thousands, I would say in totality, probably over the last 5 years.
Harris called the Protect America Act that would say we're going to end sanctuary cities. We're actually going to increase penalties for illegal entry and illegal re-entry. We're going to increase penalties if you assault ICE officers, and we're going to go after these NGOs fueling this discontent and violence on our streets. That's our counterproposal. We're not going to cede to their demands that are totally unreasonable.
Yeah, they're
Let's
ridiculous.
fund this last piece of it, and if you think this is something that you can run on, you're wrong, because you guys are on the wrong side of this issue. So bring it on.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Look, if there's people out protesting and they're doing it legally, whether if they have a permit or if they're standing on the sidewalk, they're at a safe distance, they're not messing with any law enforcement entities whatsoever, then sure, I would not be cool with federal agents going around surveilling people. I don't want our government to be a freaking surveillance state. I was pissed off with the whole Patriot Act thing. However, when they're blatantly breaking the law and obstructing federal agents, then yeah, they should be using stuff like facial recognition and all the tools they have at their disposal, because that's not of their First Amendment right. Anyway, Stephen Miller, the Biden administration facilitated mass child trafficking. Under Biden, ICE is now shutting it down and saving countless lives. And he replied to Jenny Taylor, who said a registered S offender paid smugglers to bring a child across the border from Honduras and was luckily stopped from taking the young girl into his care thanks to Trump's crackdown on the sponsorship program for unaccompanied alien children. Which, by the way, what was the number? 400,000 children were brought into the country without their parents. Either they were unaccompanied completely, or they had a sponsor who said that they were related to them, which there was absolutely no proof that they were related. And anyway, long story short, these 400,000 children at one point, no idea where they were, completely lost in the country. Fortunately, the federal government, FBI and other agencies, they've been able to locate a lot of them, but still the vast majority are still missing. There's still like 300,000 that are still out there, which is absolutely insane. According to court documents, the child who made the journey with her mother but was separated before crossing was rescued before she ended up in the hands of Alaska man Douglas Price, a registered S offender who has a rap sheet. Wow. Price paid roughly $5,000 to fund the mother and daughter's dangerous journey to the border through payments from his business, Black Bear Construction. He allegedly sent the funds to a phone number provided by the smugglers. Price also sent photos of himself to the mother and inquired about her daughter's status. Wow, man, what a piece of shit. Fucking scumbag. And there he is. So, yeah, we have people like that are out there doing God knows what. Again, hundreds of thousands of children. I don't even want to imagine it. It's horrific to even think about that. And all of that happened under the Biden administration. Of course, under Democrats. All right, let's move on. Tricia McLaughlin, drug trafficking, distribution of child pee, burglary, fraud, DUI, embezzlement, solicitation of a minor, human smuggling, they're all categorized as non-violent crimes. What? Like we said, 70% of those illegal aliens arrested under President Trump and Secretary Newsom have pending criminal charges or prior convictions. And this is from Barry Weiss, who says, is Trump really deporting the worst of the worst? The scoop is here in Camelo's reports, the FP, the Free Press, who got DHS internal documents. Camilo Montoya Galvez, CBS News exclusive, an internal DHS document shows that less than 14% of nearly 400,000 individuals arrested by ICE in President Trump's first year back in power had violent criminal records. Keyword violent. It's the most detailed look yet at who ICE has arrested. I will have that linked if you want to take a look at that. But the point is at least according to Tricia McLaughlin, who is the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. Not sure why she doesn't have a gray badge. I have no idea. However, she is the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, and she makes that statement that all of what you read there, distribution of child P, embezzlement, human smuggling, they consider all that nonviolent crimes, which, a burglary, I would say that probably should be considered as a violent crime. Fraud, not technically. DUI, maybe not technically. Embezzlement, we get where she's coming from, but still, those are, they're still criminals. And whether, 14%, maybe those 14%, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, or full-on murder, or the R word. But, the point is that the vast majority of these people have committed crimes inside our country, whether if they've been convicted or not, they're criminals, and we're trying to get rid of them. And Democrats really don't want that to happen. From Rapid Response 47, fake news. Here's the few crimes categorized as nonviolent, which is the same thing we just went over. The article even admits 60% had criminal charges or convictions, though it's actually 70%. They're criminals and they're not welcome here. And of course, that's same thing, CBS exclusive. Apparently in that article, they've got, it said 60%, right? It said something about a 60% rate. Yeah, here it is right here. Again, this is the CBS News article that Democrats are showing everybody who will pay attention to them. It says right here, nearly 60% of ICE arrestees over the past year had criminal charges or convictions, the document indicates. But among that population, the majority of the criminal charges or convictions are not for violent crimes. So does that make it okay? Well, they may not be violent. So that should be okay, though, because they're not violent. It's just fraud. These people, they only stole like $18 billion just from the state of Minnesota alone. It's not that big of a deal. It's not violent. So what? So we should allow them to stay in our country? Get the fuck out of here. Come on. Anyway, let's head on to the next one. I think I got one more with regard to this. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Here's a more accurate headline, CBS. Nearly 70% of criminal aliens detained by ICE have pending charges or prior convictions. So-called nonviolent offenders include individuals charged with drug trafficking, distribution of child P, burglary, fraud, DUI, embezzlement, solicitation of a minor, human smuggling, and more. Labeling these offenders as nonviolent does not mean they aren't threats to public safety, and it also doesn't mean that they're not criminals. So they fixed the headline. Nearly 70% of those arrested by ICE in Trump's first year back in office have criminal records, the document shows. There you go. And of course, it's the same one, like they were passing that article around all over the place today. It went quite viral on the left because everybody was echoing the fact that, well, only 14% of them had violent criminal records. Not, of course, taking away the fact that still 70% of them are criminals. Rapid Response 47, got another one. They're people who love this country. These are immigration and customs enforcement officers.
They're friends and neighbors, sons, fathers. They're little league coaches and veterans. They're people who love this country. These are immigration and customs enforcement officers.
Yeah, they wouldn't be doing the job they're doing.
They are removing violent criminals from our streets and neighborhoods. It's dangerous
dealing with all the
and
shit they're
difficult
dealing
work.
With now.
But ICE has one mission: to make America a safer place to live, and that's what they're doing.
Hey,
this is law
God
enforcement. This is ICE.
Well,
They're
there you
friends
go.
and neighbors.
Should have played that during the Super Bowl. Homeland Security, cooperation, not confrontation. ICE apprehended over 650 illegal immigrants in West Virginia in just 2 weeks. We are grateful to our local partners whose cooperation facilitated a resounding success. We are seeing similar success in Alabama and other states, which demonstrates that cooperation with federal law enforcement is the safest and most effective way to ensure public safety. Sanctuary politicians who refuse to cooperate with DHS law enforcement are wasting the time, energy, and resources of law enforcement, as well as putting their own constituents in danger. Working together is the path to make America safe again. And we've got the article from DHS.gov. Partnership with West Virginia leads to 650 illegal aliens getting arrested in just 2 weeks. DHS highlights the resounding success. Okay, well, we basically read that already. I'll read the quote here from Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. Remember her? If we work together, we can make America safe again. Sanctuary politicians who refuse to cooperate with DHS law enforcement are putting their own constituents in danger and wasting valuable law enforcement resources. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. I mean, I think it's kind of funny, though, that 3 of the top 10 don't cooperate. But anyway, whatever. We would love for state and local law enforcement to sign 287G agreements to help us remove criminal illegal aliens. Partnerships with law enforcement are critical to having the resources we need to arrest criminal illegal aliens across the country. We have had tremendous success with local law enforcement work with us, including 40,000 arrests in Florida and this 2-week operation in West Virginia that resulted in the arrest of over 650 illegal aliens. Unfortunately, sanctuary politicians like Governor Hochul and Governor Spanberger are outlawing cooperation with ICE and choosing to release criminal illegal aliens from their jails back into their communities to create more American victims, which American victims they will be creating. Everyone they let out is just another potential for someone else to become a victim, which, of course, Democrats, they love victim culture. All right, let's head on to the next. From the Department of War, when U.S. Navy Lieutenant Carlton Hutchins' aircraft collided with another, he did his best to keep his damaged plane afloat long enough for some fellow crewmates to escape. Hutchins' valor earned him a posthumous Medal of Honor, and they shared that today on war.gov, February 9th, today. Navy Lieutenant Carlton Barmore Hutchins was a skilled aviator who did his best to save his crew during one of the worst naval air disasters before World War II. He kept his damaged plane in the air long enough for a few crewmates to parachute out. Hutchins went down with his aircraft, but his bravery and selflessness earned him the Medal of Honor. And there he is. Hutchins was born September 12th of 1904 to Walter and Clara Hutchins. He had 2 younger brothers and grew up in Albany, New York before graduating high school in 1922 and attending the U.S. Naval Academy. After commissioning into the Navy in 1926, Hutchins served on the USS Pennsylvania until 1928, when he went to flight training school in Pensacola. That same year, he married his girlfriend Elizabeth Bowler, and the couple later on had a son, Walter. By February of 1929, he had earned his wings as a naval aviator. He spent the next few years flying fighter aircraft and scouting planes before studying aeronautical engineering at the California Institute of Technology. In 1937, he served with a seaplane squadron in the Caribbean before being transferred to Patrol Squadron 11 aboard the USS Langley, based at Naval Air Station San Diego, which is now Naval Air Station North Island. And February 2nd, 1938, Hutchins was piloting one of several PBY-2 Catalina seaplanes that were taking part in one of the largest fleet exercises of the time, about 70 miles off the California coast. According to the Naval History and Heritage Command, 9 aircraft were flying in formation at night during a bombing training run when a sudden rain squall began, and they flew into a cloud bank without warning. Because of the sudden lack of visibility, Hutchins' aircraft collided with another seaplane. While the second aircraft crashed immediately, killing all 7 on board, Hutchins managed to keep his failing aircraft in the air long enough to give his crewmates the chance to parachute to safety. He was only able to keep the aircraft afloat for a few minutes, but that was enough for 4 of the 6 men to jump out. The remaining 2 were in the plane forward compartment with Hutchins and died with him as the plane went down. One of the men who parachuted out died the following day, but 3 survived thanks to Hutchins' ability to keep calm and steady the aircraft for as long as possible. Wow. The crash killed a total of 11 men. At the time, it was considered one of the worst aircraft disasters in Navy history. On August 3rd, 1938, Secretary of the Navy Claude Swanson announced that Hutchins would receive the Medal of Honor for his bravery. The nation's highest honor for valor was presented to his widow in a ceremony 10 days later. And sadly, Hutchins' remains were never recovered. Anyway, and I'll have that linked. It went on for a little bit, so that'll be below if you want to finish reading that. And from leading report, breaking FBI concluded Jeffrey Epstein was not running an S-trafficking ring for powerful men, new files show, per AP. And I'm assuming that they linked it, but apparently they didn't. Anyway, let's see. see what we got. Maybe it's here with Spencer. Breaking: the FBI concludes Jeffrey Epstein was not running an S ring. See if he's got it. Doesn't look like he does either. Looks like I'm gonna have to go find it on my own. All right, here we go. I got it. The FBI concluded Jeffrey Epstein wasn't running an S trafficking ring for powerful men, the files showed. FBI poured over Jeffrey Epstein's bank records and emails, searched his home, spent years interviewing his victims and examining his connections to some of the world's most influential people. But while investigators collected ample proof that Epstein S-abused underage girls, they found scant evidence the well-connected financier led an S-trafficking ring serving powerful men, the AP reviewed of Internal Justice Department record shows. Photos and videos seized from Epstein's home in New York, Florida, and Virgin Islands didn't depict victims being abused or implicate anyone else in his crimes, a prosecutor wrote in a 2025 memo. The examination of Epstein's financial records, including payments he made to entities linked to influential figures in academia, finance, global diplomacy, found no connection to criminal activity, said another internal memo in 2019. While one Epstein victim made highly public claims that he lent her to his rich friends, agents couldn't confirm that or found no other victims telling a similar story, the record said. Summarizing the investigation in an email last July, agents said 4 or 5 Epstein accusers claimed other men or women had S-abused them, but the agent said there was not enough evidence to federally charge the individuals, so the cases were referred to local law enforcement. The AP and other media organizations are still reviewing millions of pages of documents, many of them previously confidential, that the Justice Department released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and it's possible those records contain evidence overlooked by investigators. But the documents, which include police reports, FBI review notes, and prosecutor emails, provide the clearest picture to date up the investigation and why U.S. authorities ultimately decided to close it without additional charges. And of course, dozens of victims come forward, and prosecutors failed to find evidence backing most sensational claims. In 2011, 2019, investigators interviewed Virginia Roberts Guifre, who in lawsuit and news interviews had accused Epstein of arranging for her to have S encounters with numerous men, including Britain's former Prince Andrew. Investigators said they confirmed that she had been S-abused by Epstein, but other parts of her story were problematic. 2 other Epstein victims who Guifre had claimed were also lent out to powerful men, told investigators they had no such experience, prosecutors wrote in a 2019 internal memo. Prosecutors say photos and videos don't implicate others. Look, my main problem with the Epstein files that have been revealed so far is that a lot of these emails have the names of redacted names in the emails from people who are clearly not victims. They're either addressing their emails to Jeffrey Epstein or Jeffrey Epstein's addressing an email to them, and the feds are redacting them. And I did a video with Rep. Thomas Massey that I showed on yesterday's video that I put out, and he said that he's going to be questioning AG Pam Bondi on Wednesday at a Judiciary Oversight Committee hearing, and he's going to pose those questions to her, and I'm very much looking forward to that because I would like to know why they're redacting names of people who are saying stuff like such and such girl or your youngest girl was fantastic last night, and a bunch of sick, nasty emails like that. You know, I think we deserve to know who was sending those freaking emails. So, you know, I understand that Thomas Massey's not the most likable Republican out there, but I wouldn't mind hearing his line of questioning to AG Pam Bondi, because I think there are a lot of emails out there that are being redacted, and they shouldn't be unless it's just victim names only. At least I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing with the Epstein files. All right, and we got this from the Royal Editor. Breaking: Buckingham Palace confirms King Charles will fully support a police investigation into his brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. An extraordinary royal moment. I don't know, man. Didn't they already conduct investigations over on their side, and they found out like there wasn't anything to find out, even though there's plenty? I'm sure that Prince Andrew did a lot of nasty stuff. Breaking: U.S. Congressman warns Epstein fallout could topple the British monarchy. Rep. Ro Khanna says the Epstein scandal is no longer just about disgraced individuals. It threatens the entire British establishment. And it looks like we've got some back and forth, which I'm sure we'll hear here in the video on CNN.
Week. Mr. Khanna, a British question, if I may. What do you say to the man formerly known as Prince Andrew and to Peter Mandelson with regard to giving evidence to your committee?
Mandelson may bring down the whole government, from what I hear. He just engaged in terrible behavior. I mean, the allegations are very serious that he was working for Gordon Brown and then feeding information about UK possibly buying euros and having Epstein trade on that. I mean, it is a deeply, deeply troubling. And You know, Epstein's, I saw this interview with Epstein's former girlfriend talking about how someone is a loser if they weren't mentioned in the Epstein files. It's a window into the elite impunity, this club. And by the way, I think this is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy.
What do you think it could be the end of the monarchy?
Well, if they don't have answers,
Highly doubt
if
that.
they're implicated with an Epstein class, not a good look for the British monarchy.
What questions does the King have to answer?
Well, the King has to answer what he knew. What he knew about Andrew. And just stripping Andrew of a title is not enough. I mean, Andrew needs to come before our committee and start answering questions. I mean, look, if you have allegations of raping a young girl, I don't think the appropriate punishment is you no longer get to be a prince. There's got to be more than that.
Do you think the royal family must have known something they're not telling us?
Well, they need to answer, the King and Queen, and I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand the
We're going to drag
British,
the freaking monarchy
custom,
before the
but
committee now?
What's up with this, that you're going and someone's asking the Queen a question, the Queen is offended that she's being asking a question? I mean, come on. She wears the same clothes. She eats the same food. She's just a human being.
They are
she needs
above
to
the
answer
law.
The same questions anyone does.
Isn't that how the whole kings and queens in Great Britain works? That they are literally above the law?
Congressman, what do you think of the Clintons asking for their testimony to be public rather than behind closed doors?
I believe.
All right. Anyway, not sure if we're going to get anywhere with that with Prince Andrew. Although, yeah, I think it would be nice to have him hauled in front of Congress for questioning, but I wouldn't exactly hold my breath. I guess I'll believe it when I see it. And from DOW Rapid Response from earlier today, this is electric. Secretary of War has taken the stage at General Dynamics Electric Boat. These Patriots are a vital piece of the arsenal of freedom. Of course, they got freaking Metallica playing, so now I'm going to get a little copyright notice, but that's okay. DOW Rapid Response, Secretary of War, no more dudes in dresses. The crowd goes absolutely wild. All right.
No more dudes in dresses.
Yeah, I guess the crowd went somewhat wild. They cheered it. DOW Rapid Response, the dumbest thing I've heard a general say is diversity is our strength. It's hands down the single dumbest phrase in military history.
I've heard a lot of generals
From
say
Secretary of War Pete Exet.
The dumbest thing I've heard generals say is that our diversity is our strength. It's the single dumbest phrase in military history.
I'd say our skills, our merits, our strength is our strength.
Let me tell you why. Because I look out at this group and I see a lot of different faces, a lot of different backgrounds, coming from a lot of different places. That's a beautiful thing. But that's not what makes it special. What makes what you do special, what makes what these men and women is their unity of purpose. See, it's our unity that's our strength. It's our shared mission that's our strength. It's what we fight for together that is our strength. And so we're getting rid of all the distractions, the DEI, the climate change.
Yeah, all that
no more
baloney.
dudes in dresses.
Dudes in dresses. I don't know why his microphone kept cutting out. All right. So, yeah, that happened today up in Bath, Maine. And from the U.S. Capitol Police, this also happened today. There's an exercise this morning, Monday, February 9th of 2026. We are working with our federal partners on a routine training exercise on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. Please do not be alarmed if you see emergency vehicles and low-flying helicopters. But that was kind of a crazy sight to see. I'm sure there's probably videos over on TikTok, probably here on X. I didn't come across any, although like 95% of everything that I look through it comes directly from government sources. But I'm sure if you looked up just everyday users, I'm sure there's probably people out there filming some of this stuff that was happening this morning with their training. But they followed up and said the training exercise has finished or just finished. Have a great day. Anyway, welcome to the swamp. All right, from the U.S. Navy, time to dig deep. Found a video from the Navy.
I build resilience primarily so it becomes a natural habit when things get tough. Whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, that resiliency is going to come in your life regardless, but it's up to you to dig deep when the time comes.
All right, U.S. Navy. It's been a while since I came across a video from the Navy, so just figure why not include it. HHS rapid response. Secretary Kennedy, you can summarize the dietary guidelines in 3 words: eat real food. We took the politics out of it, and we made gold standard science-based recommendations, and these are recommendations that are going to keep us healthy.
We brought the best nutritionists together from the leading universities in our country, about a dozen of the top nutritionists in the world. And we thought it was going to take us about a month, but because of the big knowledge gaps, because the NIH and FDA have not been doing their job. They've not been studying what is the etiology.
Well, yeah, they obviously haven't been doing their job. Most unhealthiest country on the planet.
So they worked very hard, and there was blood shed over every recommendation, but we ended up with under 10 pages, I think it's 6 pages. And it's written in plain English, and you can summarize it in 3 words: eat real food. And we
common sense. Should go without saying. Sure, Big Pharma doesn't like that.
We took the politics out of it, and we made science-based, gold standard science-based recommendations. And these are recommendations that are going to keep us healthy.
Amen. God willing. And we got another one from Secretary Kennedy. Parents need to be on their guard. We were told by the last administration, trust the experts. That's not a thing. Trusting the experts is not a feature of democracy, and that's not a feature of science. That's a feature of religion and totalitarianism.
Parents need to be on their guard because we were told by the last administration, trust the experts. That's not a thing. It's not a thing.
And look where that got us.
Right?
Massive inflation,
argued the
crazy
Monsanto
overreach.
Case, and they had experts from Harvard.
Show your
Stanford,
vaccine
Yale,
passport, or you
and
shall not
I
enter.
had experts from Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and they're saying 2 opposite things, depending on what their bias was. And so, trusting the experts is not a feature of democracy, and it's not a feature of science. It's a feature of religion and totalitarianism, not of democracy. So in democracy, we need, my dad told me when I was a kid, people in authority lie. And, the government lies all the time. And it lied to us about the dietary guidelines for 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely they have. I mean, the pyramid was completely inverted, wasn't it? Secretary Kennedy, you go to a restaurant and the prices are on the menu. Well, healthcare is the only place where you're not allowed to do that, and we're going to post all the prices for everything.
If you go to buy a car, and the guy said to you, I'm going to sell you this vehicle, but I'm not going to tell you what the price is till after you buy it.
This is how Congress operates, right?
Yeah, no shit.
You would not buy it. You go to a restaurant and the prices are on the menu. Well, healthcare is the only place you're not allowed to do that. You can be a woman in this country and be pregnant for 9 months and not be able to find out, despite making a phone call every day, what it's going to cost you to have that baby. We did it. So we're going to post that, all the price for everything. If you want to know the cheapest MRI in your driving area, you'll be able to find that immediately.
That is going to be amazing.
And I went through
if they get that done, that's going to be a game changer.
The web page that we've designed, we were really genius. And again, these genius designers have come in from Silicon Valley, and Joe Gebbia, who's been amazing, and designed this website so that you can look at all the hospitals and all the medical centers and all the concierge services in your area.
Oh my God, dude, that is going to be a massive game changer because, look, if you go to the emergency room and you get a CT scan, they're going to charge you like $8,000. Or even if you go for a scheduled MRI or CT scan, it could cost you thousands of dollars. And to be able to view the prices from all over the place, it's going to force everybody to have to compete with each other because they really want to keep those off the books because that way they could keep everything extremely expensive. But yeah, man, that's going to be a huge plus, man. Let's hope they get that done. Dr. Oz, CMS on the president's push for transparency in healthcare. You would never go to a grocery store and then put things in your cart and not know what they're going to cost. Companies jack up the prices because you're not aware. We have to drive transparency through the system.
There's something called a CSR.
Let's hear this from Dr. Oz.
Which is a way of making sure that insurance works more efficiently. The Affordable Care Act is a good example of this. These were in the original Working Families Tax Cut legislation, was taken out by the Democrats for reasons that are unclear.
Yeah, why
to me,
didn't
'cause it seems
Obamacare
like it's
roll all
better
this
for
shit
everybody.
out?
It will drop premiums 10 to 11%.
It's almost as if it was all available in Obamacare.
So I'm giving you a
Slammed that door
insurance
shut.
hack that works to reduce insurance premiums for the American people 10 to 11%. We want it back in. We want that to, it was originally designed and supposed to be in the Working Families Tax Cut legislation. We want that back. The other thing then is transparency is vitally critical. When I'm called into the operating room, and I'm a surgeon, as you know, the first thing we do, if I'm helping a colleague, is we open the wound and put more light in the wound. Transparency. We got to see what we're doing. Most Americans don't really know what they're paying for. Their pharmaceutical prices are an example, but when you go to the hospital, you don't know what it's going to cost you.
Right.
You would never go to a grocery store and put things in your cart and not know what they were going to cost. And that's what we ask the American people to do. And of course, because of that, companies jack up the price because you're not aware, you're not an informed consumer. We have to drive transparency to the system, so we use our biggest ally, the American people, to judge whether the prices are worth it or not.
Well, look, and that could even apply to doctors too. Like if you need to get a kidney procedure, you can shop around for a doctor that's offering the most reasonable price. Of course, you don't want to get like the bargain basement doctor that's going to do it for pennies on the dollar because you get what you pay for. But still, I just think that's not only is that going to be helpful for patients to shop around, but it's also going to essentially force the medical industry to compete with one another to get the lowest prices. You know, like one of those fruits of capitalism. And from Scott Turner, freedom of religion is our First Amendment right because it is the foundation on which all other freedoms rest. President Trump has made protecting this right a clear and unapologetic
Freedom of religion
priority.
is enshrined in the First Amendment as America's first freedom. It is not an afterthought, but it was a declaration of priority. It's the foundation on which all other freedoms depend on. And Governor Pastor, you spoke of this in your remarks in Davos. The liberty to worship God is grounded in our freedom to assemble. As a deeply personal and inherent right, a government that tramples such vital rights will treat nothing as sacred. President Ronald Reagan once declared, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We have witnessed firsthand the onslaught of what just 4 years of the Biden regime could accomplish.
Oh yeah, it got ugly.
And the enemies of faith
it could
have
get way
no
more
intent
ugly too.
to stop with their systematic dismantling of our Constitution and the freedom of our forefathers that they fought for. That's why President Trump has made the protection of America's foundational freedom a clear and unapologetic priority. And I thank him.
Hallelujah. Well, I mean, just imagine if Democrats get Congress back in their hands and if they get the Oval Office again, and imagine just nuking the filibuster and packing the Supreme Court. Imagine the insanity that would unfold after that. I don't even want to imagine that, but that sounds like a very real reality. Sounds like that's something that they're explicitly looking to go after. Tom Emmer, the price tag for fraud in Minnesota keeps going up. False names, fake driver's licenses, and fraudulent doctor's notes, all way too easy. We will not turn a blind eye. State officials had to know something. We will hold them to account. And Tom Emmer, by the way, he's the GOP majority whip, but he's also from Minnesota. At least I believe he is. I'm pretty sure he is. Yep, Minnesota's 6th district. And this will be found on Fox News. Minnesota woman sentenced to prison for $325,000 SNAP fraud scheme. Latasha Thomas created false identities and claimed high-risk pregnancy status to maximize SNAP benefits in an elaborate scheme. I mean, dude, high-risk pregnancy. What, like people who have a high pregnancy risk, what, do they eat like 10 times as much or something? Minnesota woman who defrauded the federal government out of more than $325,000 in federal supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits was sentenced last week to a year in prison. Hopefully she's going to have to pay back all that restitution. Latasha Thomas was convicted on one count of mail fraud and will owe restitution, there you go, to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, announced U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen on Friday. Latasha James conspired with her daughter, Ambrosia Thomas, and another relative, Cynthia Thomas, over 2 years to unlawfully acquire electronic benefit transfer, or EBT, cards, which are issued by the state government to qualifying applicants and loaded monthly with money from SNAP, according to the Justice Department. The trio created fake Minnesota temporary driver's licenses using false names, with each license picturing one of the Thomases. The fake licenses were submitted to Hennepin County in applications for EBT cards. Believing their SNAP allotments could be increased if the purported recipients were confined to bed rest, the Thomases repeatedly claimed to be women experiencing a high-risk pregnancy. In addition, they submitted fake doctor's notes in an effort to maximize their theft of government funds. And the EBT cards were sent by the state to Cynthia Thomas's apartment in Roseville. She allegedly lived They are under a false name, Sophia Gold, that appears on one of the scheme's ill-begotten cards. When authorities searched the apartment, they found several pieces of mail addressed to pseudonyms used in the scheme. And look, imagine how many other people are doing this exact same thing, whether if they've been caught or haven't been caught. It's probably in the hundreds, if not the thousands, not only just in Minnesota, but all over the country. I'm sure this is everywhere. It's probably happening all over the place. God knows how many billions of dollars in fraud that's occurring. And rapid response from Secretary Burgum of the Interior. President Trump's economic policies are working, whether it's energy dominance or whether it's his tariffs. Everything that his critics were concerned about, that they thought was going to be an issue, has turned out not to be. Of course not.
Well, they're critics because President Trump's economic policies are working, whether it's energy dominance, which is making sure that we've got prosperity at home and peace abroad, or whether it's his tariffs. Everything that they were concerned about that they thought was going to be an issue has turned out to not be. President Trump right again on economic policy. And again, for Americans, that means lower gas prices. When you have lower energy prices, it lowers the price of the clothes on your back, the food on your table, how you heat your home, the gas in your car. Energy prices are a component of anything, and he's driven those down tremendously. We've got states that are under $2 a gallon of gas. We have 31 plus states that are below 3 gallons. Your individual results may vary because we have some states that are fighting President Trump's agenda, but those people that support his economic agenda live in those states are thriving. The economic boom that we're going to see this year in terms of growth, real wages, taxes are down, regulations are down, income is up. 2026 is going to be a fantastic year for the American economy.
Yeah, I think in many ways things are, look, it's going to get better, not worse. I believe in my opinion, I believe that's going to be the case. The middle class still going to be struggling for the foreseeable future, probably for a number of years. I don't even know when we're going to get, pre-2020 relief economically with regard to, the amount of debt that the average middle class person might be in, or the average household, even with the higher interest rates, which I know President Trump's trying to get down. I don't think that's really going to fix not everything, certainly. But look, either way, I think it's going to be a better year than last year, but no doubt at all. Probably the year after year, it's going to get better, especially with all the investments that's happened in the country. And they're ramping up manufacturing, so that's always a good thing. The federal budget deficit totaled $696 billion in the first 4 months of fiscal year 2026, the CBO estimates. That amount is $143 billion less than the deficit recorded during the same period last fiscal year. Okay, so in other words, it's a horrific number, but it's not as horrific as last year. So individual income taxes measured in billions of dollars. Actually, this image was, well, let me see if, oh yeah, I've already got it up on the full screen. Okay, whatever. But anyway, individual income taxes and payroll taxes, custom duties, corporate income taxes, and other measured up in the billions. Individual income taxes, 2025, $823 billion, 2026, $925 billion. And let's see, payroll taxes, $554 billion last year, $577 billion this year. So anyway, it's on the upswing. I mean, things are looking better, and hopefully it'll continue getting better year after year. Just as long as inflation keeps kept in check, which, I mean, it kind of is, but it's kind of not. It's not at 2% yet, even though it's a lot closer now than it was last year, certainly the years prior under Biden. The White House new mortgage affordability is at a 4-year high after rates fell in January. This is on Housing Wire. Mortgage affordability a 4-year high after rates fell in January. The average monthly payment fell to $2,091. Hardly a lot of relief. Down $164 in the past year. But like I said, this year is going to be better than it was last year. 2027 is probably going to be better than 2026. However, it's still insane to see that number. Like, what was the average mortgage in 2019? It was like half of that, wasn't it? Wasn't it like $900 something? It was a way, way lower number than it is now. But anyway, U.S. Census Bureau. Which countries and neighborhoods in the U.S. are most socially vulnerable to the impacts of natural disasters? Check out our ranking tables and use our interactive map to find out how your area fares in comparison. And let's see if they got that interactive map. I don't see one. Okay, here. Looks like this should be it, the interactive map. So it's supposed to show map of the country and the local areas that are more or less vulnerable to natural disasters. And actually, my state isn't all that bad. It's kind of in the middle. Florida, 19 to 22.99. So this shows the social vulnerability in the United States in the event of a disaster using restricted microdata from the 2024 American Communities Survey and small area modeling. The CRE creates population estimates based on 10 individual household level components of social vulnerability, including poverty status, number of caregivers in the households, unit level crowding, communication barrier, employment, disability status, and health. Let's see what else it says. Let's see. Health insurance coverage, age 65 and older, vehicle access and broadband internet access. The population universe for CRE includes all individuals except those in adult correctional facilities, juvenile facilities, and college dormitories. And they've got it separated by county, which is kind of cool. And you can, oh man, they've got this like way down. Hold on, let me check my area. I'm down here in Pinellas County. And let's see. I don't know. I guess I'll click over here. I'm just curious to see what it brings up. So Pinellas County resilience estimates 2024 statistical differences 90% confident with 3+ components of social vulnerability. 3+ components of social vulnerability. Percentile ranking 97.79. Significant difference versus national rate higher. Number of individuals with 3+ components 1,747. The FEMA National Risk Index, March 2023. So winter weather, none. Strong wind, very low. Hurricane, relatively high. Earthquake, very low. Wildfire, very low. Riverine flooding, very low. Coastal flooding, relatively low. So that's cool. They've got a whole list of just different potential natural disasters. But anyway, I'll have this linked if you want to take a look at that at your local area. You want to have a look and kind of see where your area fares, since they released this from the U.S. Census Bureau. And the U.S. Interior Press, in case you missed it, President Trump is unleashing our fishing industry. On Friday, he signed proclamation to unlock nearly 5,000 square miles of Atlantic waters for commercial fishing. Thank you, President Trump, for putting American fishermen first.
Big news this week for America's fishermen. President Donald J. Trump is unleashing our fishing industry, signing a proclamation to reopen the Northeast canyons and seamounts and unlocking nearly 5,000 square miles of Atlantic waters for commercial fishing.
The area
that
looks
means
so
more
small.
opportunity for New England fishermen, stronger coastal communities, and real support for industries like Maine lobster and longline fishing. This action rolls back unnecessary restrictions imposed by the Obama and Biden administrations, puts American workers
Well, of course,
first,
man. They wanted to
all while
depopulate
keeping
the earth.
protections in
They want us to
place.
starve.
Thanks to President Trump, America First Fishing is back in action.
I mean, hell, man, as long as it gets the prices down, I'm all for that. And we got this one from Freedom 250. Big game spot. After 250 years, the American experiment still hasn't finished. It's been built, tested, carried forward, and bought for. And we passed it on hand to hand, life to life. Generations ago, ordinary people risked everything to begin it. 250 years later, the work continues because freedom is worth it. This year, America turns 250. For more information about Freedom 250 events and how to participate in our nation's 250th birthday celebration, you can visit the link, which I'll have below, at freedom250.org. And they have a video, so we'll check out this clip.
After 250 years, the American experiment still isn't finished. It's been built, tested, carried forward, and fought for. And we passed it on, hand to hand, life to life. Generations ago, ordinary people risked everything to begin it. 250 years later, the work continues. Because freedom is worth it. This year, America turns 250. After
250 years, man, already. I'm getting old. This is crazy. Already 250 years. All right, and KNSV News 3, Las Vegas. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy touted the removal of close to 2,000 truckers and vehicles from U.S. roadways after federal inspectors and state law enforcement found the drivers were unqualified and failed to meet basic safety standards. So that's good. At least they got 2,000 off the road, with hopefully many more to go, or at least all of them. All the ones who are illegally here certainly shouldn't be driving. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy touted the removal of close to 2,000 truckers and vehicles from U.S. roadways after federal inspectors and state law enforcement found the drivers unqualified and failed to meet basic safety standards. Operation Safe Drive shows what happens when we work together with our law enforcement partners to pull unqualified vehicles and drivers off American roads, said U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Operation Safe Drive distracted, reckless, impaired, visibility enforcement was a 3-day operation led by Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or the FMCSA, occurring between January 13th to the 15th. Inspectors from FMCSA partnered with state law enforcement officers targeting major freight corridors and other high-risk locations in an effort to crack down on dangerous driving behaviors, and drivers are properly qualified. Over the course of 3 days, officials conducted 8,215 inspections, resulting in 704 drivers having their license revoked. 500 of those drivers failed to meet English proficiency requirements. A total of 56 arrests were made, which included charges like driving under the influence. And dude, that's just in one area. Imagine if they did that nationwide. There'd be thousands and thousands of arrests, probably. Another 1,231 vehicles were also removed from the roads as well. This operation was about safety, FMCSA Administrator Derek D. Barr said in a statement. When drivers ignore the rules, operate without proper qualifications, or get behind the wheel impaired, they put all of our lives at risk. Operation Safe Drive demonstrates the value of focused enforcement and strong partnerships in removing these drivers and vehicles from our roads. The news of the operation's success comes just a day after the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt mourned the loss of 4 Americans killed by an illegal immigrant driving a semi-truck in Indiana. He was issued a CDL license in Pennsylvania. So I would at least go as far as to assume that they're going to do Operation Safe Drive in other regions in the country. I certainly hope that they would, because it obviously proved to be quite a success, especially only a 3-day period, removing over 8,000 vehicles. And U.S. DOT Rapid Response, thank you to Florida for bringing common sense back. Every driver should speak English and understand the rules of the road. That was recently passed here in my state, that if you don't speak proficient English, then you can't have a license.
Anyone applying for a driver's license in Florida must now pass an English exam. This rule, which has been in effect since Friday, aims to promote, quote, clear communication, understanding of traffic laws, and responsible driving behavior. I think it helps to understand traffic laws if you're going to be driving a car.
Basic standard.
The move follows this deadly crash last year where an illegal migrant's accused of making an illegal U-turn, killing 3 people. Officials say Harneet Singh failed his CDL test 10 times. 10 times before
he failed
that
it 10
incident.
times.
Anyone applying for a driver's license in Florida must...
Absolutely insane. Freaking 10 times he failed it. EIA, electric vehicle sales fell as hybrid vehicle sales continued to rise in 2025. Today in energy, this should come as no surprise to anybody who's following the automotive industry, that a lot of people, they're not all about electric. I mean, look at this, man. It is tanking. Battery electric going from 10% all the way down to like 5%. That is crazy. Quarterly U.S. light-duty vehicle sales by powertrain, Q1 of 2015 to the fourth quarter of 2025. So, I mean, yeah, of course, electric vehicles were basically nil way back then. I mean, look, there were Teslas and stuff back then, but it really ramped up, especially after COVID. And over on the left side, it shows from 2020 to 2025, all other light-duty vehicles that are non-hybrid are on the incline. Of course, like that battery electric is starting to slide down. Because, man, people got range anxiety, plus electric, and it's not even that good to use during the wintertime or the summertime for that matter. Because apparently if you blast your air conditioning, it could cut your range by half. The same if you're running your heat, and it's just not good. Especially if you live in an apartment complex, you can't charge it there. If you're a renter, generally you can't charge it at home. So you got to use public chargers, which are a pain in the ass. You got to wait in line, and everybody who pulls up to a charger, God knows how long it's going to take them. An hour, 2 hours. Imagine if you're like third in line, you're gonna be sitting there all day. Okay, U.S. currency, National Pizza Day. It was today. By the time you watch this, I'm sure it's gonna be into Tuesday, if not even later. Let's celebrate and talk about dough, not just the pizza kind, but what you carry in your wallet. Check out the free resources on our website to discover the secret sauce behind U.S. currency security features. And you can find that at uscurrency.gov. It give you some info on, your personal. Well, maybe not personal finances, U.S. currency education program. It offers a wide range of free educational and training resources. So yeah, I'm sure it's up that alley with personal finance. You can take a training course. They got K-5 classroom material. You can download the materials right here. It's all for free, and you can order materials on U.S. currency at uscurrency.gov. I'm sure it's a pretty good resource. All right, so let's roll on to the next. from the National Weather Service. High winds, the potential for flooding, rainfall, and even a winter storm warning is in effect today across the Hawaiian Islands. Flood-prone roads and other low-lying areas may be closed due to elevated runoff and overflowing streams. And that's going to be at weather.gov, which I think it just goes to the homepage. Yeah, so it looks like I could click on, yeah, there you go. Hawaii. Gale warning for the entire area, small craft advisory, and so on. But anyway, the Post states that there's even a winter storm warning in, you read it right, in Hawaii, happening in Hawaii. Winter storm warning in the pink. So it's in the Big Island, up in the highest of elevations, which, of course, that's one of those trick questions. Which state in the country didn't get any snow last year? Typically speaking, Hawaii ain't going to be one of them, because Hawaii always gets snow every year at the top of, what is that? Is it Mauna Kea? Mauna Loa? Maybe both? No, probably Mauna Loa. I don't know. Whatever. All right, anyway, we only got one more to go from You Knew It, You Know It. And that's what I always finish on, NASA. While NASA continues to eye March as the next potential NASA Artemis launch opportunity, a targeted launch date will be set after completing a successful wet dress rehearsal and reviewing the data. On nasa.gov, NASA conducts repairs and analysis ahead of next Artemis 2 fueling test. That's a cool shot of the moon, probably the full moon from last week. Or yeah, there it is, Sunday, February 1st. Since concluding a wet dress rehearsal February 3rd ahead of Artemis 2, technicians have replaced 2 seals in an area where operators saw higher than allowable hydrogen gas concentrations during the test. Engineers are analyzing the removed seals and developing plans to address all issues ahead of the next rehearsal. Once the Space Launch System rocket's tanks were drained of cryogenic propellant following the previous test, technicians immediately began work to access the tail service mast umbilical on the mobile launcher and detach rocket and ground side interface plates to inspect the area of elevated gas levels and replace seals around 2 fueling lines, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, it was delayed a little bit, but they are working out the kinks and making sure that all systems are go for when they launch Artemis 2, which should be coming up in just a couple of few weeks. Or no, I believe that they announced that it's going to be early, maybe mid-March is when they're going to be launching the 4 astronauts to take a trip around the moon. Last week's wet dress rehearsal test for the Artemis 2 mission brought teams one step closer to liftoff. Since the test, technicians have replaced 2 seals in the area where operators found a hydrogen leak, and that is an awesome picture to finish up on. And that will do it for this episode. Again, everything's going to be linked below, anything that I only read halfway through. Also, I reposted a bunch of those posts to my profile. That's going to be in the description below. It's a direct link. And I will be back tomorrow with another episode of The Swamp. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And tomorrow I'll be covering The Swamp once again, covering the politicians, the bureaucrats, the agencies, and everything else. And also I'll be posting daily on X as I do every day, so you can feel free to comment over there too if you'd like. And I thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and God bless America.